Hi everyone! Sashiko has been getting so popular lately and we often get questions asking how do you get started, what tools do you need, and how do you stitch Sashiko motifs. So in this video, we're going to show you everything you need to know as an absolute beginner to start Sashiko. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss any of our reviews or tutorials. So first things first, what is Sashiko? Sashiko literally means little steps in Japanese. Traditionally, it was used to reinforce worn clothes or add warmth to a fabric layer. But today, Sashiko has become a mix of functional and decorative stitching. You'll see it being used for visible mending on jeans, decorating tote bags, or even making coasters and home accessories. The special thing about Sashiko is that it only uses one type of stitch, which is the running stitch. And with just this stitch, you can create all kinds of design, from simple grid-like patterns to even detailed drawings like these Disney characters. What makes it versatile is that you can work on many types of projects. Some people like starting with a small square of fabric to make a coaster or handkerchief, while others stitch directly onto clothing or bags to add extra decoration. Alright, let's talk about the tools you need to get started. First, a Sashiko needle. A Sashiko needle is longer than a regular sewing needle, which means it's easier to load multiple stitches at once. For Sashiko, we recommend the Lecien Sashiko needles, which we carry in our store. As Lecien is one of the most trusted needlework brands in Japan, these Sashiko needles come in a pack of 6 with different thickness and lengths ranging from 4 to 5 cm, so you can experiment and find the one that feels most comfortable to you. Next is the thread. For this, we like to use the Sashiko threads by Daruma, which has a matte texture that makes stitches look bold and clean. In Sashiko, using thicker thread is important because it makes patterns stand out clearly and gives that authentic Sashiko look that regular embroidery floss can't achieve. The Daruma Sashiko thread comes packed on a card like this. It's 100% cotton and single strand, so you won't need to divide it like regular embroidery floss. It also comes in 2 thickness options, the thin version on a black card and has 40 meters per pack. It gives a finer, more delicate look and works really well for dense and detailed patterns. While the thick version comes on a white card, comes with 30 meters per pack, this one makes your stitches pop and is perfect if you want bold, highly visible designs. Daruma also offers 30 colors including variegated and gradient options. In the gradient option, you'll get a multicolored effect like this with just one thread. For a 30 x 30 cm Sashiko project, you usually need about 3 to 4 packs depending on how detailed or complex your pattern is. When it comes to fabric, Sashiko works best on natural fabrics with visible weave, like cotton or linen for example. A weave that you can see clearly makes it easier to guide your stitches and also makes it easier for your needle to puncture through it. If the fabric is too tightly woven, it can be hard to push the needle through and may cause the fabric to wrinkle. For beginners, we recommend going for cotton or linen fabric with medium weight. Or you can also go for pre-printed fabric like this, but we'll get into the details of this later in the video. Next, you'll need a marking tool to draw your pattern onto the fabric. Our favorite marking tool for Sashiko or any sewing project is the Pilot Friction Heat Erasable Pen. It's super easy to use because you can remove the markings just by ironing them over. But be careful when working with dark fabrics because it can sometimes leave a bit of residue. Also, the markings may reappear if the fabrics get cold again, but they should fully disappear after washing. Another option is the Soline Water Erasable Pen. The markings made with this pen will disappear with water or washing instead of heat. But just be careful not to iron fabric with markings made with this pen as it might make them harder to get rid of later. But to make things simpler, you can also just use a regular pencil. Then you'll also need a ruler or template to draw your Sashiko pattern for the project. If you're working with a ruler, you can start off by deciding the space you'd like for the stitches, then draw lines or dots to mark the pattern. But if you prefer a much easier and time-saving option, try using a template like this Cosmo Sashiko template. It looks like a ruler with holes, and you can draw the dots through the holes to create evenly spaced dotted lines with your chosen measurements. It comes in 2 types of grid, diagonal or dotted grid. The dotted grid has straight holes, while the diagonal grid has holes in a diagonal direction. They also come in various sizes from 3mm to 7mm. This is especially helpful when you want to customize your own pattern without spending hours measuring manually with a ruler. Another tool that may come in handy is a needle threader. Not all people need this, but having this can make it easier and faster to thread your needle. In case you're not familiar with how to use this tool, we also have a separate video tutorial that shows this in detail. Now this next one is optional. You don't need it to get started, but it can make stitching a lot easier if you use a thimble. There are so many thimbles out there, but you want something like this that covers your middle finger. This lets you use the base of your finger to push the needle through the fabric, which makes stitching faster and less tiring once you get used to it. For Sashiko projects, we like using this rubber thimble by Clover. It comes in a pack of 2, so we can wear one on our pointy finger and another one on our middle finger. This way you can pick up your needle easier using both fingers without worrying that it will be slippery. If you're looking to purchase these tools, we have all of these supplies in our store. We've linked them all below if you'd like to check them out. Once you have your tools ready, the next question is how do you actually begin and draw the pattern? So in Sashiko, there are 2 types of pattern, Moyōzashi and Hitomezashi. Moyōzashi is also known as pattern Sashiko. It is a type of pattern that looks like a curved motif or drawing of an object, such as waves, circles, or leaves. Another one is called Hitomezashi, also known as one-stitch Sashiko. This style starts with a grid of evenly spaced dots. You'll stitch one stitch at a time and the pattern gradually emerges from the grid, forming beautiful woven-like textures like this. For both types of pattern, you can start with either pre-printed fabric or draw your own pattern. When it comes to printed fabric, one of the easiest way to start is by using pre-printed Sashiko fabric, like the ones from Olympus. These fabrics already have dashed lines printed on them. You just follow along and the pattern appears as you sew. There are many brands out there that sell pre-printed Sashiko fabrics, but so far this Olympus one is our favorite. They have various options for both Moyōzashi and Hitomezashi. There are even fabrics with Disney characters for you to stitch. What we like about it is how soft the fabric is. The weave is also perfect for beginners. This one in particular is for a double-layered handkerchief. That means you'll stitch through both layers for a thicker finish. Olympus is also a very well-known embroidery brand, so you can always count on the quality. Another method is to draw your own pattern. Once you have picked out the pattern, you can trace it onto the fabric by drawing dots or dashes in the spaces you'd like to go for. You can also opt to use the Cosmo Sashiko template we mentioned or draw freehand. If you're working with the Hitomezashi pattern, we highly recommend using the template because it will make everything so much easier. You simply have to follow the holes in the template and the dots will be perfectly aligned with even spaces. The template is also thin enough to make marking quick and effortless, but still sturdy enough to be reused across many projects. If you want a dense pattern, go with about 3mm spacing, but for a more open look, space them out to 7mm. Anyhow, if you're looking for a Hitomezashi pattern to try, we have a Hitomezashi guidebook with 13 different patterns in our store. It's available both physically and digitally in our store, so you can print out the pattern directly for your project. Now for the stitching itself. Sashiko is basically a running stitch, but the trick is instead of pulling through each stitch one by one, you will load multiple stitches onto your needle before pulling the thread through like this. This gives Sashiko its unique rhythm and what makes it so relaxing to stitch, as you'll basically be repeating the same motion throughout the project. But it's important that when you're stitching, don't pull your thread too tight because the stitches should lie flat without puckering the fabric. Now that we've covered all the basics, we'll show you the full process of stitching a Sashiko project with both options, with the printed fabric or by drawing your own pattern. Let's start with the pre-printed fabric. If you would like to learn how to work on a project by drawing your own pattern, you can skip this section and watch the next section instead. For the pre-printed section, we've chosen the Sakura pattern. In Sashiko, you can always choose to stitch it in one color only or mix a couple of colors. For this sample, we have mixed pink and green thread in a thick weight for a more realistic look of the flowers. Depending on the brand of the fabric, it will usually tell you how much thread you need to stitch the entire fabric. For this pattern, it says here that it requires 5 bundles of threads, and each bundle being 20 meters long. So that means we'll be needing 100 meters of threads in total. Since the Daruma Sashiko thread is 30 meters long each, it means that we'll be needing roughly 3 to 4 packs of threads for the entire handkerchief. For the purpose of this video, we'll only be stitching a small section, but feel free to stitch the whole fabric. But keep in mind that most pre-printed Sashiko fabrics use water erasable ink. That means the guidelines will disappear once the fabric is washed. Until you finish stitching, make sure to keep your fabric away from water or moisture so you don't accidentally lose the pattern. For all Olympus pre-printed fabrics, it usually comes with a simple instructions like this that tells you which parts to stitch first. Since this fabric is supposed to be used as a handkerchief, it has been printed out and cut for that. As seen on the instructions, first we'll begin by turning the fabric inside out, and then we'll stitch the seam allowances on the far side with the frayed edges. Keeping the margin at 1.5 cm from the pattern, we'll then stitch both layers of the fabric together with backstitch. If you're not familiar with backstitching, we have a short tutorial on this, so you can check that video out first before proceeding with this part. Or you can also use a sewing machine for this part if you have one. After that, we'll cut the remaining fabrics, leaving only 0.5 cm of seam allowance. Then we'll turn the fabric and begin backstitching around the border of the pattern to secure both layers together. Since we'll only be stitching on small segments for this video, we'll be skipping this part, but this is how it should look around the pattern. Now we'll begin stitching. We'll start by stitching the vertical lines in pink thread. First, cut a workable length of Sashiko thread. but not too long so it doesn't tangle. The rule of thumb is usually at an arm length or extra 10 to 15 centimeters from the length of the pattern itself. Next, thread your Sashiko needle. Since Daruma thread is a single strand, you don't need to separate it like embroidery floss, so you can use the thread as it is. Alright, time to make our first stitch. For this project, the instruction manual has recommended using what's called kabuse nui, also known as cover stitch, which means we'll start around 3 stitches away from the starting point. And what we'll do is we'll leave around 2 cm tail at the end and sew little stitches smaller than the intended stitch. This will act like a reverse or lock stitch to prevent the thread from unraveling once it's pulled. Then once we reach the intended starting point, we can stitch regularly over the little stitches, creating a second layer of stitch. Remember this technique as we'll be using it every time we finish with our thread and are about to start with a new strand of thread. And as explained earlier during the running stitch tutorial, instead of pulling through one stitch at a time, load several stitches onto the needle in a row. Then pull the thread through in one motion. And remember not to pull too tightly so the fabric stays neat and doesn't pucker. And with that, you have just made your first Sashiko stitches. Continue along your marked lines until your pattern is complete or until your thread runs out. When you reach the end, we'll stitch over the last few stitches to secure the stitch. But this time, try to stitch between each layer of the fabric, so this second layer of stitch won't show on the front side and it stays clean. Once we're done with this vertical section, we'll stitch through the horizontal segment next. Next, we'll continue with the diagonal section but still keeping the pink thread here. You can see that the pattern is starting to show now, and all that is left is the center part of the flowers, which we will now stitch with another color. And that's it, that's how you stitch a pre-printed Sashiko fabric. Once you're done, you can cut all the thread ends and wash your finished work to remove the printed lines. You can then use it as a napkin or get creative and sew it into many things. You can also cut it into a smaller piece and use it to make small goods like pouches or as pocket on a shirt. Next, we'll show you how to draw the pattern yourself and stitch it from scratch. For this sample, we'll be trying out this tulip pattern on a cotton fabric. We'll first start by drawing the pattern with the Cosmo Sashiko template in 7mm dotted grid. For this video, we'll be using a water erasable pen so it's easier to see the guidelines, but we actually recommend using the Pilot Friction Heat Erasable pen instead when working with the template, because it's thinner and it's less messy than a water erasable pen. To make things easier, we've also traced out the pattern on the fabric itself, so we can easily stitch through it. The best part about drawing your own pattern is you can always customize the size and draw the pattern directly onto anything like a pocket, or if you're planning to make a pouch, you can also draw the pattern onto the fabric before sewing it. Once you've drawn out your pattern, cut a workable length of Sashiko thread, but not too long so it doesn't tangle. The rule of thumb is usually an arm's length or extra 10 to 15 centimeters from the length of the pattern itself. Next, thread your Sashiko needle. Since Daruma thread is a single strand, you don't need to separate it like embroidery floss, so you can use the thread as it is. Alright, time to make our first stitch. For a single layered fabric, there are 2 ways you can start and end your stitch, with or without a knot. We explained how you can start your stitch without a knot in the earlier section with the pre-printed fabric, but for this section, we'll show you how to do it with a knot. Begin by tying a small knot at the end of your thread like this. This will stop it from pulling all the way through the fabric when you begin stitching. Now let's start stitching. We'll first work on the vertical segment in green as shown on the instructions. Start by bringing your needle out from the back of the fabric to the front. Instead of pulling through one stitch at a time, load several stitches onto the needle in a row. Then pull the thread through in one motion. Remember not to pull too tightly so the fabric stays neat and doesn't pucker. And with that, you have just made your first Sashiko stitches. Then continue along your marked lines until your pattern is complete or until your thread runs out. When you reach the end, secure your work by tying a small knot like this. Once we're done with this section, we'll work on the next section next in pink thread. Next, we'll do the other diagonal section. And just like that, you have your Hitomezashi pattern all stitched. Since we used a water erasable pen to draw the lines, we can easily remove these markings by spraying some water or washing it away. So that's your Sashiko crash course. You now know what tools you need, how to mark your fabrics, and how to stitch your Sashiko projects. If you're excited to try, check out our links below for our Sashiko supplies and starter kit. And let us know in the comments what Sashiko project would you like us to share with you. Thanks for watching and happy stitching!